In UniFi network controller, in your SSID settings, you can find a configuration called band steering. If you move the mouse cursor to this small icon, you can see some confusing description. It says it can move the compatible clients to 5 GHz Wi-Fi. So what does compatible means and why it's only 5 GHz? For example, what if your access point does support 6 GHz, right? Will the band steering move your client to 6 GHz instead of 5 GHz? Did Ubiquiti forget to change the wording, or it only steer the traffic to 5 GHz on purpose? Another confusing thing is the band steering setting not only exists on your SSID level. If you go to your access point under settings, you can see another section for band steering, and this time it even has another option called balanced. And this time, Ubiquiti doesn't give you any description. A lot of confusing things. There's basically zero official information on the web. So in this video, let's try to explore the band steering configuration. There will be two parts for this topic. What you are watching is the first part, and then the second part is mainly about the testing. When the band steering is disabled, what will happen in real world? So let's use this imaginary example to showcase it. So let's say you have an iPhone. Your access point supports 3 different bands. It's broadcasting signals on the 3 different channels. How your Wi-Fi client decides which band to connect with, or more specifically, which BSSID to connect with. The AP is continuously broadcasting the SSID using beacon signals on the 3 different channels. Your Wi-Fi device, when it needs to connect to Wi-Fi, it will scan all the available channels and find these 3 channels which have beacon signals. And then if the Wi-Fi client wants to know more about the specific BSSID, it will send the so-called probe request to your AP, and your AP will respond with probe response. For all the 3 channels, a similar thing will happen. After the scan is done, your Wi-Fi client will have all the information from all the channels it scanned. And then now is the time for Wi-Fi client to decide which channel or which BSSID to connect with. So this is how it works if you don't have the band steering enabled. So it's completely up to the Wi-Fi client to decide. In real world, it may cause problem. In the past, when 5G is still something new, most of the Wi-Fi clients were old. They either only supported 2.4 GHz or it would prefer 2.4 GHz. And the end result is the 2.4 GHz became super crowded, but the 5 GHz was relatively empty. So to change the situation, AP may do something, the so-called band steering. Try to steer some traffic from the 2.4 GHz to 5 GHz. That's the original purpose of band steering. But how to implement it is completely up to the vendors. There's no international standard about band steering because all the implementations are proprietary. Of course, you cannot expect official documents explaining how it works, especially when it comes to Ubiquiti. Based on the internet forums, I compile the information how I understand how it works. It may be wrong, it may change in the future. Anything can happen because there's no official document and the vendor is free to change in future releases. But at least this is what I understand. Remember, in UniFi network controller, the band steering setting appears in 2 different places, right? So this slide is about the setting on the access point level. If you enable band steering, what's the different behavior between the AP and the Wi-Fi client? The Wi-Fi client will still detect the beacon signals on the 3 different bands, and the Wi-Fi client will still send out the probe request during the scan process. However, the thing changed is the access point will do something. For example, if the access point received this particular probe request on 2.4 GHz channel, but if within some time period the access point already received another probe request on 5 GHz channel, which means this particular Wi-Fi device is able to handle both bands. So then AP will know that just by checking the probe request history. The AP will take initiative. For example, the AP will choose not to respond to 2.4 GHz probe request. And because the Wi-Fi client doesn't receive response from 2.4 GHz, of course, the Wi-Fi client will choose the one which does provide response, which is 5 GHz. Basically, that's how the classic band steering works. So the AP will take initiative. AP will be smart enough to know which band is better for the client to connect with. Remember, in the UniFi setting, you have 2 options: prefer 5 GHz or balanced. So what's the balanced option? It works in similar way as the prefer 5G, but it's just the AP will consider more between 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz. Instead of pushing all the connections to 5G, the AP will do the balancing. So maybe some Wi-Fi client, the AP will still allow in 2.4 GHz. For some others, AP will push them to 5 GHz. That's the difference between these 2 options. Starting from a recent UniFi network controller firmware update, a new band steering option on the SSID level was introduced. So there's almost no any information explaining how it works. What I'm going to talk about in the following 3 slides may not be 100% correct. If you know anything more, or if you know where my understanding is wrong, please let me know in the comments. Let's break it down to 3 steps. First step, it works exactly the same way as without band steering. So the Wi-Fi client still takes initiative. The Wi-Fi client will decide which band to connect to. If in the second step, the Wi-Fi client already chose the 2.4 GHz, but the access point doesn't think that's a smart choice, the access point will try to steer the client to 5 GHz. How? By sending the client a BSS transition packet. In the packet, the access point will include the neighborhood report, basically telling Wi-Fi client, see, there's better choice. You may want to switch to another band. In this step, the AP takes initiative. And in the third step, if the Wi-Fi client agrees, if the Wi-Fi client chooses to switch to another band, the Wi-Fi client will disassociate with the 2.4 GHz and try to authenticate to the 5 GHz BSSID. It sounds better choice because it's not that forceful. It gives the Wi-Fi client grace. So let's try to check how it works in real world. This is my lab environment. I have a UniFi AP connected to a UniFi switch, and this AP supports all the 3 bands, including 6 GHz. It will broadcast the same SSID in 3 different bands. I am going to use 3 different devices to test the band steering functionality. Why 3 different devices? That has something to do with whether the client will take initiative when it comes to band selection. So the thinking of band steering was due to the old Wi-Fi devices. They are dumb. They don't know what's better. so they always chose 2.4 GHz, right? But for modern Wi-Fi devices, they are already smart enough. For example, Apple devices and Androids, they both prefer 5 GHz or 6 GHz over 2.4 GHz. Even the AP doesn't do anything. In many cases, your Wi-Fi devices already take 5 GHz as higher priority. That will complicate our testing because we simply want to test the UniFi access points functionality about band steering, right? But Windows PC works differently. In the Wi-Fi driver settings for Windows, you can choose the so-called band preference. It can either has preference or without any preference. That would be perfect in some of our testing. And another reason I chose these three specific devices because they all support all the three bands. Remember, one of the questions I want to answer is, in the UniFi network controller's wording, it always say it will steer to 5 GHz, even though the AP may support 6 GHz as well, right? I simply want to know whether it's just something Ubiquiti forgot to change, or it really means it will prefer 5 GHz even over 6 GHz. So that's why I picked three devices. They support all the three different bands. Another thing is 2.4 GHz has advantage when it comes to range, depending on what's the distance between the AP and your Wi-Fi devices. Sometimes from the same AP, the signal strength for the three different BSS IDs on the three different bands may be different. That may also impact Wi-Fi devices BSS ID selection. That's why I will test in close distance and in far away distance just to see the differences. During the testing, I'm going to run 3 sniffers on the 3 different bands just to understand what really happens under the hood. And this is the screen layout I'm going to use during the testing. Apparently, to fill everything into one video will make it too long, so I'm going to have a second video about the testing for band steering. Okay, thanks for watching.